Welcome to the 700 Club. Hezbollah was planning a massive assault on Israel that would have been even worse than the Hamas attacks on October 7th.
Israeli forces in Lebanon are capturing the weapons that would have been used in those attacks. Paul Strand brings us the story from Jerusalem.
In southern Lebanon, the IDF is showing the world Hezbollah was set to use many homes just across the border from Israel as launching pads for a massive invasion of the Jewish nation.
Every house is a terror base.
The IDF's chief spokesman says Hezbollah's elite Radwan units were set to strike from 6 of these locations simultaneously with some 4,000 to 6,000 terrorists. They used all these homes for weapon storage.
You see the hand grenades here? Sniper rifles. Extremely high sniper rifles.
The IDF says the invasion would have even been bigger than Hamas's October 7th attacks. Hezbollah had placed its terrorists along the border days after those attacks, waiting for the order to strike. While Israel prevented that potential invasion, it's also promising to strike back at Iran for launching more than 180 ballistic missiles at it last week. And Israel's defense minister says it will hit hard.
Our attack will be lethal, precise, and above all, surprising. They will not understand what happened and how it happened.
But a senior Iranian military advisor is warning for every one location Israel hits, Iran will target dozens of Israeli locations, both civilian and military. And the UN's Relief and Works Agency is back in the news, this time as a nominee for the Nobel Peace Prize, after being nominated in February by a Norwegian politician. It's believed at least 9 Gazans on UNRWA's payroll may have taken an active part in Hamas's brutal assault on Israel October 7th. So there's fresh outrage this week that the committee picking the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize refused to remove UNRWA's nomination, despite protests from thousands of people. UNRWA critic Hillel Neuer of UN Watch was furious at predictions the UN relief agency could have won.
It would be really an abomination. It would be obscene.
Ayelet Samaranu's son Yonatan was murdered on October 7th, and then an UNRWA social worker hauled his body off to Gaza. Ayelet is disgusted UNRWA was in the running for the prestigious Peace Prize.
We're talking about an organization that has taken a very active part in the murder, rape, and kidnap of innocent people.
The UN Secretary General, who's been critical of Israel, and the UN International Court of Justice were also nominated, but none of them won the prize, which went to a Japanese organization of atomic bombing survivors. Paul Strand, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Let me remind everyone, the UN was supposed to keep southern Lebanon as a weapons-free zone. And here Israel is showing the evidence that, well, there are a lot of weapons. In fact, every single home along that border was used to store them. And you go, well, where was the UN? Where was the resolve to maintain peace? And instead of maintaining the peace, they're actually funding the war. UNRWA had salaried employees who were part of Hamas and participated in the October 7th attacks. It is absolutely mind-boggling that that would be allowed to happen. But then there would be criticism from the UN when Israel stands up and says we can't have UNRWA operating in our territory. It's obviously compromised. We just can't have that. Let's recognize the truth here and recognize that the UN seems to be arrayed against Israel. And anything coming out of that organization directed at Israel shouldn't be allowed to stand. And the U.S. should stand absolutely against it. Well, here at home, Jews also face threats against their lives right in the U.S. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That's right, Gordon. Jews around the world, as well as here in the United States, will observe Yom Kippur beginning tonight. It is the holiest day on the Jewish calendar. American Jews, though, also face growing threats simply because of who they are. 6 years ago this month, an armed gunman killed 11 people at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, the worst massacre in the history of the American Jewish community. CBN's Wendy Griffith spoke with a security expert who was there. He explains who he now targets for full-time training and what to do in a worst-case scenario.
We train the community to survive 3 to 5 minutes. And why do we do that? It's that magic time when something bad happens and law enforcement is called.
What is the protocol?
It's run, hide, fight.
As Pittsburgh's first Jewish communal security director, Brad Orsini will never forget Saturday, October 27th, 2018.
It was a rainy morning.
We all went down into our sanctuary space.
I turned around, and there was the man with the gun.
Shots fired, shots fired. They have an active shooter in the building.
It was an unimaginable worst case scenario for the Jewish community, that an individual went in with a high-power rifle, an AR-15, and just shot people while they're praying. At their most vulnerable, 11 people lost their lives, 9 families. There were 2 brothers and a husband and wife. And it was a horrific crime scene.
Orsini said it could have been worse had congregants at Tree of Life Synagogue not been trained.
The Pittsburgh community and the Jewish community trained for this, and we spent, from the time the program started in January of 2017 up until the shooting, we trained over 6,000 people in the Jewish community on basic safety measures, how to save your life.
Orsini says the #1 rule in a shooting attack is run.
It's hard to hit a moving target, and give them statistics. If somebody's moving, even a trained professional might have trouble hitting a moving target. That's why active shooters are so successful, because people lay on the ground and they're executed. And we know that because they're paralyzed with fear, because their mind can't react, because their heart rate is so high. During the Tree of Life, there was a 90-year-old man who ran up 2 flights of steps, barricaded in a room, and lived.
Stephen Weiss credits the training as well as God for saving his life that day.
I ran up the side of the chapel, across the bima, and out a door that's on that side of the bima. As I was going out of the door, shots were starting to happen in the chapel itself.
I look back on it, and to me, God has a reason why I'm still here.
Orsini now trains the Jewish community in security on a national level. He says with the growth of anti-Semitism, the need is more important than ever.
We're doing a training module for our Jewish campus students as well, to give them that heightened awareness, to give those tools necessary so they can feel more empowered and resilient, because we want them to live their best Jewish life, especially on campus. They should feel free to wear a kippah, wear a Star of David, whatever that is, moving throughout the campus. If they don't feel that, we are losing.
As the threat of more widespread violence grows, combined with students back on campus and Jews celebrating the high holy days, Orsini says the priority is to be prepared and remain vigilant.
We're encouraging the community, we're begging the community, if you see a sign of hate, report it to us, and we will make sure we assess it and get it to law enforcement if actionable.
Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
Thank you, Wendy. Well, turning now to the aftermath of Hurricane Milton. Coastal residents in Florida are trying to put their lives back together in the wake of the powerful storm. Still, despite the destruction, many are relieved Milton wasn't worse. CBN's Dale Hurd has a story.
Floridians are still discovering the full extent of Milton's destruction and learning stories of survival. This man was found floating 30 miles off the Gulf Coast, clinging to a cooler to stay afloat. The Coast Guard rescued him after he tried to ride out Milton on his fishing boat in 25-foot seas. Milton came ashore Wednesday night south of Tampa as a Category 3 hurricane. The Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department was going door to door on boats, rescuing more than 700 people.
Please be careful. If you feel better, go on the dry ground. We can take you there.
500 were rescued from this apartment complex. This 14-year-old boy was found floating on a piece of fence. In Tampa, a mother and son used their fishing boat to help stranded people.
These people all need help. Nobody has been here today.
In Gulf Coast communities from Naples to Venice, some have found their homes buried under as much as 3 feet of sand. 38 reported tornadoes damaged hundreds of homes. On the other side of Florida, in Palm Beach Gardens, this dumpster was picked up by a tornado and thrown onto a house. At least 6 people were killed when a tornado hit this retirement community.
When I was coming back around, there was people screaming in the trailer park, and 2 or 3 of us jumped a ditch to go check it out, and one guy was already passed away, and it looked like there was a bomb went off right there.
The Palm Beach County Sheriff called the damage in the Wellington area extensive, saying all 200 homes he surveyed were uninhabitable.
And I can tell you why, because the places that I saw looked like it was an atomic bomb blew it up.
Operation Blessing, already helping victims of Helene in North Carolina, is sending pre-deployment teams into the Tampa Bay area. OB relief workers will be taking generators, mobile kitchens, construction equipment, chainsaws, and other supplies to help those in need. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Heartbreaking scenes of not just property uprooted, Gordon, but lives also uprooted.
Yeah, the death toll is horrible. These tragedies are just, it's one after another, and we can't get into fatigue about this. We have to say we need to do our part. We need to say let's be of help. There are people who are suffering, who are in absolute desperate need, and we want to be there for them, to let them know that we love them and we care for them. Our motto is quite clear. When disasters strike, we strike back with love and compassion. We want people to know that people care about them and are willing to do whatever it takes in order to help them. If you want to be a part of the relief effort, it's real simple. Pick up a phone and call us, 1-800-700-7000. Say, I want to give to the Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund. You can call that number. You can go on cbn.com. There's a place on the giving page to designate your gift to disaster relief. You can text OBDR to 71777, or you can write a check and just put Disaster Relief Fund in the memo line. Mail it to us at CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23463. Be a part of it. Be a part of helping people in need. Most Israeli teenagers are drafted into the military right after they finish high school. Some of them spend a year at an Army prep school. Since October 7th, the Five Fingers IDF Prep School has been giving students a crash course in dealing with the trauma of the ongoing war. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl reports.
They call it Five Fingers, which means whatever you do, do it with your full heart, mind, soul, and strength.
This place is like a preparatory school for life, where students learn to give from their hearts and even lay down their lives for the good of others.
It's a way of life. For me, it's a philosophy.
Former Israeli SEAL Dror Yanai leads the Five Fingers Mechina, a one-year program helping young people get ready for challenges they'll face in the IDF and life overall.
The Five Fingers, it's a value that you understand from day one. Everything you do it till the end. Feel that you do the best that you can.
Key principles include training the mind and body in the Five Fingers method with a focus on community outreach and social awareness.
It's very hard to test those things on a normal course of life. It takes time to see the impact.
This past year, 67 students from Israel and other countries took part in the 10-month program. It began about a month before the October 7th war. Five Fingers board member Tzur Feldman says dealing with the impact and repercussions of that turned into their crash course.
And what the Mechina did was amazing. In a week, there was a whole program created to help kids that was refugees from the South in Eilat.
Suddenly, the situation put students in a real-life test.
And it was amazing to see. They were becoming like teachers, like coaches for kids. And not for kids that they knew, but kids that came with all the impact and all the horror that they've seen.
So far, 15 past graduates have died during the war, a high percentage leaders attribute to many serving in top units and their willingness to lay down their lives for others. CBN News met 3 students from the U.S. and Canada who joined the school. 19-year-old Gil Dory from Philadelphia finished this year as part of the school's 6th graduating class.
I'm doing a gap year before the Army, after high school.
A very special year, a year where I wanted to better myself, a year where I wanted to learn new things. I wanted to come to Israel, learn the culture, learn the language.
While Dory, the great-grandson of the IDF's first chief of staff, didn't have to serve in the Army, he chose to do so.
It's been great. There's been rough parts, but overall it's been a great year. After the war and everything we've done and the whole year that we spent here, I think that there's nothing more meaningful that I've done in my life than this.
Born in Israel, Lehi Friedman moved to Baltimore, Maryland at 8 years old. She returned to the program last summer.
I heard that we're moving down south to volunteer and help kids. I told my parents I'm coming back. I don't care. I want to help.
Friedman says while it's difficult being away from her family, she made the right choice.
It was definitely the hardest year that I've ever had in my life, but like the best year. Wouldn't want to do anything else.
Despite the challenges of helping children who've had to deal with tragedy, Friedman says it's worth it.
It was definitely hard, hearing all the trauma they went through while we don't know what's going on, what will happen next. So it was definitely hard, but at the end, we really just saw how impactful we were. They still talk to us. We really made a connection with people that we never knew we would ever meet in our lives.
Ezra Abraham from Toronto, Canada, first came to Israel 2.5 years ago.
I just felt something different in the air. I just loved it. I felt like I'm myself here. My life goal is to go to the Army, draft into combat, and protect this country that I love so much. Eventually live here and raise kids here.
Abraham came to the Mechina in order to enter the draft, and then October 7th happened.
My mom called me. She says, "Ezra, you're coming home." I said, "It's not happening. I'm sorry. I'm part of them now. I joined the Israeli culture, and this is the ultimate test. If they're all struggling, I'm struggling. If they go to war, I go to war."
A few weeks later, they became certified coaches, helping evacuees in Eilat.
And we basically taught these kids values and gave them a reason to wake up every morning. Even when I wasn't giving them workouts, I was just with them. I was that big brother. They can spill out their heart to me. They can tell me whatever they want. That's what it's like. And with some kids having a little bit of meltdown, and I ask him, "Where's Dad? Can I talk to Dad? Dad's a hostage." What do you say to that?
While he entered here as a student, Abraham says the war helped him quickly mature.
It's the story is these kids, and giving back to these kids that went through so much. There's nothing better than giving back to these people. It's the ultimate goal.
Dory sums up what this year has meant to him.
You know, I always said to myself when I was in high school and stuff, I wish there was a school that taught me about life, taught me about how I can be a better person. And this is that. This is exactly that. Sitting through these lectures and stuff is lessons that you can take to your life that then you can process and use onward. And that's like the gold that lies here.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Five Fingers Mechina, Zichron Yaakov, Israel.
Well, that's just one of the reasons we stand with Israel. Just imagine that kind of program. Someone who has the opportunity to live in the United States, but they say, no, I want to be with my people. I want to be in Israel. I want to raise a family here. This is where I want to live. And right now, that homeland is in danger, and I want to do everything in my power to protect it. What an incredible culture. What an incredible heart to say, I'm all in. It's just part of the genius of Israel. Why is Israel in the middle of all this conflict, in the middle of all the terrorism, all the opposition that is seemingly marshaled against them from around the world? They still stand strong, and on ratings of what are the happiest nations in the world, they still rank in the top 10. It's absolutely incredible. And I want you to have a wonderful documentary that we've put together called The Genius of Israel that examines what are the aspects of their culture that make such a significant difference, and the contrast between Israeli culture and their value of life and the culture of Hamas and the culture of Hezbollah and the culture of the Iranian theocracy. Those are cultures of death, where they somehow think they're going to paradise if they die in jihad and in attacking Jews. It's just absolutely a stark contrast, an Islamic death cult versus this wonderful, flourishing culture that's a light to the nation, a startup nation. This wonderful documentary shows you the reasons why. What are the various things in Israeli culture that all come together to make this so unique and such a light to the nations? You can have it for a gift of any dollar amount, and your contribution will go into future documentaries. Right now, we're working on one called The Oracles of God, which explains how we got the scriptures and how the same Bible that Jesus and the disciples read 2,000 years ago is the one we have today. I think it's really important to get that message out, and your gift will go into the production costs of that. So to get a DVD copy of The Genius of Israel and then instant 4K streaming access on the CBN Family app, to just call us, 1-800-700-7000, or you can go to geniusofisraelfilm.com. You can also text GENIUS to 80888. Do it now. Call us, 1-800-700-7000. LIHAO felt like he was being stabbed by needles. At times, his lips turned blue. This boy had a hole in his heart, and without an operation, he could die.
LIHAO has been an aspiring author since he was 10.
I started writing about a boy who always overcame his enemies. There was a lot of hope in my stories, which gave me hope.
LIHAO was born with a hole in his heart. His mother abandoned the family, leaving his father to raise LIHAO alone.
His colds were much worse than other kids. He coughed and coughed, and his heart beat really hard. It was difficult to watch.
My heart hurt really bad, like a big stone pressing on it.
Mr. Song worked long hours in construction. Whenever possible, he researched remedies and went to the mountains to get herbs he thought might cure LIHAO's heart. But nothing worked, and LIHAO continued to get worse.
The larger the hole got, the more pressure was on his heart, and the more pain.
Sometimes in PE class, my heart beat really fast, like a needle was piercing me. I felt dizzy and my eyes got hot. I covered my chest and lay on the ground. My classmates laughed at me.
Sometimes he got pneumonia.
He looked awful. His lips got blue. I was scared, so I took him to the hospital. The doctor had me sign a critical notice. He said that if LIHAO didn't get surgery, he might not live to be 20 years old. But the surgery was very expensive, and there was no way for me to ever afford it. The news felt like a building crashing down on me.
I was hot, then cold, and I couldn't catch my breath. The doctor put oxygen in my nose. I have a friend who also had heart disease, and he died of a heart attack. I was worried I'd die just like him.
Through it all, LIHAO continued to write.
My hands shook, and my handwriting was crooked, but I thought to myself, if I can write more, I will. Writing helped me escape my pain.
He also prayed.
Some friends told me about Jesus. I believed Jesus could help me, and I asked him to take away my heart disease.
Then a doctor told Mr. Song about Operation Blessing, and you helped make heart surgery possible.
LIHAO's illness is cured. Now he can run like a normal child. Thank you all for your concern and support.
I can jump and race with my classmates. Now I write about how Jesus encourages and helps people overcome hard times. And when I get older, I want to be a part of Operation Blessing and help people like you help me.
Be a part of Operation Blessing. Be a part of helping people in need. Be a part of helping people around the world. A portion of every gift you give to the 700 Club goes into the wonderful work of Operation Blessing. Another portion goes into the work of CBN International to preach the gospel around the world. You're a part of everything we do when you join. So if that's you and you want to be a part, call us, 1-800-700-7000. Say, I want to give and become a member of the 700 Club. Now, how much is that? It's just $20 a month. That's 65 cents a day. You can join at higher levels, and if you're already a member, I encourage you to increase. Go to 700 Club Gold at $40 a month. 1000 Club, $1,000 a year. That breaks out to $84 a month. At whatever level, do it right now. 1-800-700-7000, or go to cbn.com, or text CBN to 71777.
Welcome back to Washington for the CBN News Break. People across the world, including right here in the United States, were treated to a spectacular light show in the skies Thursday after a severe solar storm reached the Earth. It followed a coronal mass ejection from the sun. The storm brought the phenomenon known as the Northern Lights farther south, where it was seen in multiple parts of the U.S. Well, another story of God at move around the world. Thousands of young people packed the Porsche Arena in Stuttgart, Germany, for the Fire Festival last weekend to praise, worship, and hear the Word of God. After a short message on salvation, hundreds of young people went to the altar to give their lives to Jesus. The festival ended with a Jesus March through Stuttgart. It's just the latest event to bring the gospel to Germany, as others are also reaching the country with the gospel of Jesus Christ. Well, you can find out more about this story and always get the latest from CBN News by visiting our website at cbnnews.com.
For months, Dawn Spicer was working part-time at her church. She was singing on the praise team, conducting Bible studies, and having an affair with a coworker. All the while, she thought, it's going to be okay.
Dawn and Jeremy Spicer's marriage had gotten off to a great start. The couple loved their time together.
We seemed to get along very well, and, you know, I never saw any red flags.
I didn't feel like we had problems. It was good. It was good.
But that started to change when 3 years into their marriage, they had twin boys.
I believe our focus changed from being focused on each other, being focused on our marriage, to being focused on our boys, on being parents. Our marriage was strained because of that. However, I don't think either of us really saw that.
In addition to taking care of the family, Dawn worked part-time at their church and was a singer on the worship team. Over the next few years, she started feeling overwhelmed and that she wasn't being a good mom or wife.
I saw myself as never being good enough. I never was confident in anything. I always felt like I had mom guilt. I could do something better. And as a wife, I felt like I could do better. I felt like, you know, Jeremy deserved better. It was nothing that anyone else was making feel like it was my own insecurities.
Jeremy had his own struggles, and the couple started growing apart.
I was focused on taking care of the boys and just really not putting the right focus on her, or as much focus on her as I should be.
Feeling alone and unloved, Dawn was drawn to a coworker's affirmation and attention.
He would tell me good job, or you did great today, or things like that, which kind of boosted my confidence and made me feel good. That was filling a void of not being good enough and all of that. And hearing those things from him led us into a bad place.
That bad place was an affair that lasted 3 months, and the only way to stay in it was to justify it.
I never thought I'm gonna leave Jeremy. I never thought I'm gonna leave my children. I would just kind of pretend that Jeremy wasn't in the picture when I was with him, and vice versa. When I would come home, I would close that box and pretend it wasn't there, and I would just be wife and I would just be mom. And so I just, in my head, justified it all and just said, Jeremy will not find out, and it's all gonna be okay.
Dawn Spicer's here with us now for more of her story. We welcome you to the program.
Thank you so much.
You had the perfect family, you know, your couple that loved each other, started out really strong, 2 perfect little boys. What happened?
I was trying to fill a void that I felt inside of me with something other than our God. And so I was craving the accolades and affirmations from people, and that's what I thought was going to complete me.
You know, Dawn, in your book, you talk about the fact that you were even feeling some of those things before you and Jeremy ever married. And you know, when we're in church and when we're doing the doing the right stuff and going through all of that, and we feel that emptiness, there's always something before us that we think is going to, when I get here, or when I meet this person, or when I do that. But you talk about the fact that you never really intended that this would destroy your marriage. So in the process of this, while it was happening, how did you justify it? What was in your head and your heart?
It was a disturbing place to be. One, like I said, I would compartmentalize things. So when I was at home, I played that part. And when I was with him, I played that part. And I kind of just blocked each other or each thing out. But in the deepest, darkest pit of sin, I thought somehow God's going to make this good.
Going to redeem it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he does, but it's never easy, is it?
No.
You share with a friend, thinking that the friend, who's a very close personal friend, is going to keep this confidence. And what happened?
She kept it for a little bit, and then really just said, "You've got to tell, or I am." And so kind of gave that ultimatum, which really saved my life in a way.
Yes.
So, yeah.
That's a true friend.
Yes.
That'll call you to accountability. What was it like when you finally said, I have to tell Jeremy now? What was that like?
That was kind of the worst moment I think I've ever felt, thinking about the destruction that was going to come from that, the pain for him that was going to come from that. And so it was a terrifying thing, but it was an absolutely necessary thing.
How did you manage what he was feeling? Because it was, you loved him, but to watch someone you love go through pain like that when you know you're the one causing it, how did you deal with that?
That was a hard space to be, and really it was just fully surrendering to the Lord and begging for his help. There was a moment where Jeremy was laying on the bathroom floor, unable to even get up because he was so devastated. And I laid there beside him thinking, I should be the one that's comforting him, but I'm the one that has inflicted so much of this pain. And so it was a very strange duality to be in. Yeah.
But it's not an unusual story, really. No. I mean, we see this happening not just out there in the world, but in the church and with people who probably never ever thought they'd see themselves there. Through all of this, God has really taught you things, spoken things to you. Where does sin begin? You know, it gets a foothold somewhere, and then we say yes to one thing, and pretty soon we're up to our elbows. Talk about that.
It starts with small decisions that really just seem inconsequential in the moment, but it's that one decision of justification that just leads to the next. And I heard the saying often, we are always one decision away from a bad decision. And I didn't ever understand that until I was in that position. And it really does. It starts with that one little justification where you just don't think it's a big deal. And it slowly becomes a stronghold.
So you tell your husband, and you're walking through the muck and the mire of all of this, which had to be awful for all of you, for your husband, your family, you. But God has obviously reached into your heart and your mind, and that emptiness that was there even before Jeremy, while you were going through all the perfunctory church stuff, is now full. How did God minister that wholeness to you in such a place of brokenness?
You know, when you get to that place of brokenness, you're completely empty. There's nothing left. And day in and day out for many, many months, I sat at our kitchen table, and it started off with me just being able to just say, Jesus, help. And I just continued to just dive into his word and seek him and surrender. And the freedom that comes from fully surrendering to him is like nothing else that you can possibly fathom in your life. And so feeling that freedom for the very first time in my life has given me that fullness, that hope, and that joy that I will live with until I am in eternity with him.
One of the other elements that had to be a part of this for this to all transition into a miraculous recovery had to be Jeremy's forgiveness.
Absolutely.
How did that come about?
He, as soon as I confessed, of course he was absolutely broken, but he immediately looked at me and he said, I have a God that forgave me. How dare I not forgive you? And he did just that. And that's not to say that it wasn't a struggle, it wasn't a fight, but he not once did he throw it in my face after that. He fully forgave me. And from that point on, just decided that we were gonna fight hard and work this out.
The other aspect of that had to be you forgiving yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That had to be a challenge.
It was a challenge, and that's where counseling came in. That's where the accountability.
You did counsel. Yes,
I did,
I think
absolutely.
That's so important.
Yes, I think counseling is an absolute definite in this. And I had a small inner circle of women that surrounded me and spoke truth to me, and that is what really carried me to the next level.
You talk about that, how important it is to have people in your life who are willing to walk through the muddy places with you to get you to wholeness. Sounds like you found that in a group.
I absolutely did. There were a lot of people that ran. There were a lot of people that ran, and you can't blame them for that because these are situations that you don't know how to handle. A lot of people don't know how to handle it. But I did. I had a small circle of women at the church that chose to step in the mud and carry me through. And in Exodus, there's a story that talks about Moses where he is on the hill, they're fighting, and
Joshua,
two people that were with him came and carried him or held his arms up so that they could fight the war. And I really feel like that's what my people did for me, was they held my arms up and carried me to freedom.
Yeah, to the finish line.
Yes.
Your book is called Even Still, The Journey from Betrayal to Forgiveness and Redemption. What do you want the takeaway to be for people?
I want the takeaway to be, for one, if you are in darkness right now, if you are sitting in sin or whatever poor choice or struggle that you have, turn the light on. Step into the light, because the darkness will only get darker. And there is so much freedom, and there is a God that loves you more than you can possibly fathom, loves you more than any poor decision that you've made. And so just turn the light on and take that first step.
Well, the book is called Even Still. It's available nationwide. Dawn, thank you so much for being with us today. What a story.
Thank
a
you.
Story of redemption. That's why they call him the Redeemer. Bob and Carol argued about everything. They didn't see eye to eye on anything. They didn't even like each other. This couple's marriage was miserable until the day they took a boat ride.
September 19th, 1999, we took the boat out onto the river for a cruise. What happened next? It changed our lives forever.
Carol and I were married on August 24th, 1984. What should have been a day that ushered in marital bliss was instead the beginning of a volatile union.
We argued about everything. We argued about nothing.
Carol wanted to get married, and I didn't. And I figured if I married her that the argument would stop and we'd get along a little better, and obviously that didn't work out very well.
We're two different people. We're just total opposites, and many people are total opposites, but we don't see eye to eye on anything. What made matters worse was that I grew up in an Italian family, and it seemed like the men gave the women whatever they wanted, and that's what I expected also.
Our worldviews were so different, and we really didn't even live like a married couple. We were more like roommates. I think there was always a spark of love there, but we just didn't like each other.
I think we both wanted to be right, and we both couldn't understand why the other person wasn't thinking the same.
As Carol became more and more bitter, I escaped through drinking alcohol and staying gone. I was a pilot. I was able to pick up the longest trips I could pick up. I stayed as gone as much as I could.
The more that I tried to change him, the more that he stonewalled, he disengaged, and that's why he didn't even want to come home.
Alcohol just seemed to dull the pain. Drinking was a real problem for me.
If he had one drink, he was going to have 10 drinks, and then he would just not be fun to be around.
For the next 15 years, we drifted further and further apart.
We sort of settled into what was mediocre or less than mediocre.
Everything changed on September 19th, 1999. It started with us attending my friend's wedding. At the beginning of the wedding, Billy goes down to the front of the chapel and he gave his testimony. He just talked about what Jesus had done in his life, and I just knew God was speaking to me. And God was telling me, Bob, it's time to get off the fence. It's time to quit drinking. And it was just probably the clearest I'd ever heard God speak. And I just knew that my life was going to change. Later that day, we took our boat out onto the Ohio River for a cruise. I told Carol what I felt God had spoken to me that day.
I'm thinking, well, that sounds really good. I don't really know that that's going to happen, but one could only hope. Bob went to start the boat back up, but the engine was dead.
There was a fuel leak, and I fixed the fuel leak, cleaned everything up, and I thought everything was going to be fine.
When Bob hit the starter switch, the boat exploded.
Blew up, flames everywhere, and Carol, I looked at her, and she was actually flying backwards off of the boat, and I'm guessing probably 20, 25 feet from the boat. She was just in the air going backwards.
Since I wasn't a swimmer, I didn't have a life jacket on, I was pretty sure I would drown, and that's when I cried out to God, and I said, Lord, please don't let it end like this.
I was completely surrounded by flames, and I saw Carol come to the surface in the water.
I can't explain it, but it was serene, just looking around, looking at a burning boat, not understanding what was really happening at the moment. Nearby boaters saw the accident and called 911. They helped us to shore, and an off-duty nurse tended to us.
I was remarkably unscathed. Carol, however, suffered first, second, and third-degree burns. She spent a week in the hospital recovering, and the near-death experience was a wake-up call for both of us. We knew that God saved us for a purpose. There was just no question about it. Carol and I were in total agreement on that. One of the first times we ever agreed on anything.
All of a sudden, when you almost lose somebody that you loved, even though the marriage wasn't good, we were both immediately on board to find a way to have a good marriage.
We just immersed ourselves in God's Word and everything we could do to get closer to Jesus. We began a faith journey that day.
God was teaching me things that I didn't know about myself. And Bob was doing the same thing. All of a sudden, we found ourselves to be on the same page. We were chasing after the same things.
We had done it our own way for way too long, and once we started being obedient to what God was telling us, we fell in love.
Over the next 15 years, our marriage went from being something that caused us pain to becoming something we cherish to this day. As a result, in 2014, we started a ministry we call Mercy to help others struggling in their marriage.
Father God, I just want to pray for every couple that's watching this, Lord.
God has transformed every area of our lives, which made it easier for us to do well in marriage.
When we do this God's way, it's beautiful. We do it our way, maybe not so much.
Love is totally different when it's unselfish. It's like finding the cure for cancer. You just want to shout it from the rooftop that if God could save our marriage, He could save everybody's marriages. We went through fire and water, yet you took us to a place of abundance. And that's the life we're living now. We're living a life of abundance, following God's ways and sharing it with other people. And we can't have a greater joy than that.
Dawn and Jeremy, Carol and Bob, very candid about the struggles that they've gone through as couples. If you're watching today and you're married, you know marriage is hard. It's hard. It has to be worked at. When we first marry, it's usually pretty impractical, and it is pretty selfish, whether we realize it or not. We feel like someone is loving us the way we want and need to be loved, and we get to love them back. And then we have to live together. You know, God uses all of this to refine us because the person we're supposed to be most in love with is Him. It's not like He leaves us hanging out there. He's made provision. The problem is that most of the time we try to solve all of this on our own. And most of the time our focus isn't getting close to Him. It's meeting our own needs. What would make me happy? What would make me feel fulfilled? What would make me feel significant? What kind of person would it take to really love me? The truth is, we don't even really know what that would take for ourselves. If you're struggling in your marriage today, I hope that both of these stories have been an encouragement to you. Your circumstances might be different, but what isn't different is the ability of God to step right into the midst of impossible situations where love is lost, where people don't see any hope or any future, and redeem it. To redeem is to buy back what was lost. You know, Carol said we were suddenly looking outward in the same direction at something bigger than us. We need that in our marriages. That's Jesus. He's the one who created it. He's the one we make our vow before when we commit to each other. Let him heal your marriage if it's broken. Can I just pray for you right now? Father, marriage is a union, and it really takes three. It takes you and a bride and a groom. And so, God, I just lift up every couple that's listening right now, that's watching right now, that's struggling right now. And I ask you to help us to be honest with ourselves before you. Help us to be willing to surrender our needs, our will, our way. Help us to be willing to change. Help us to be willing to give and to make what we give 100%, not 50-50, but 100. With you and for you and in you, God. Help us to trust you when it all looks so bleak. Today we just surrender to you our relationships, we surrender to you our families, and we ask you to heal us and to make us whole in Jesus' mighty name. If that's you and you'd like more information on God's Word and what does He say about marriage, we've got a Love and Marriage pamphlet. We'd love to send it to you for free. Our number's toll free, 1-800-700-7000. Here's a word for you from 1 Peter 4:8. Above all, love each other deeply because love covers over a multitude of sins. God bless you. We'll see you next week.